I know.
Get somebody else.
Sitting here like-
3 minutes past.
I think he
Yeah,
knows.
I know.
He seems to know that after a nuisance.
Call the meeting of City Council to order at 7 o'clock on April 25th. Roll call.
Mr. Janik?
Here.
Mr. Bukabach?
Sure.
Mr. Goodell?
Here.
Mr. Van Churen?
Here.
Mrs. Wasil?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Present.
I will, Mr. Van Turen.
Move to excuse Mr. Dietrich. He has a letter on file.
Mr. Bukovic.
Second, please.
There's a motion and a second to excuse President Dietrich. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried. Mr. Dietrich is excused. If you will stand with me for the prayer, and then we'll be led in the pledge to the flag by Sergeant at Arms Bukovic. Will you bow with me, please? Gracious God, bless this meeting tonight. Guide our decisions as you guide our lives, and keep us all within your care. And now may the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now go to item number 4, the consent agenda.
Minutes of the regular council meeting held April 11th, 2016. Minutes of the ordinance committee meeting held April 18th, 2016.
Mr. Miller.
Move to accept consent agenda as read, please.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to accept the agenda, the consent agenda as read. Take a vote.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabach?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Churen?
Yes.
Mrs. Wasil?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
That item passes 7-0. The consent agenda is accepted. Item number 5 is not on here, but we'll just say, is there anyone here who wishes to speak on any of the items on the agenda? Seeing none, we will go on to number 6, ordinances and resolutions, first reading.
An ordinance amending Amherst Codified Ordinance Section 1149.02, 1149.03, 1149.01, 1149.05, renumbering 1149.08, repealing 1149.09, renumbering 1149.10, 1149.11, and 1149.12, amending and renumbering 1149.13, amending and renumbering 1149.14, repealing 1149.15 and 1149.16, renumbering 1149.17, renumbering 1149.18, amending and renumbering 1149.21, renumbering 1149.19 and 1149.20, and restating the index of sections as amended.
All right.
Could you repeat
I'm
that?
going to do that every time, right?
Wow, that was good. That was good.
At the end of the commercial
Mr. Goodell.
comments.
I'd like to make a motion to take item 6A to its second reading.
Okay. Mr. Miller?
Second with comment, please.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to take item 6A to its second reading. Mr. Miller?
Thank you. Once again, thanks, Ms. Turley, for that. There's a lot going on here. It's finally made it to the floor. I'd like to once again thank our building inspector, Mr. Dave McCartney, Mr. Carlson, and Mr. Pecora, our legal advice here on this, and those who have given all of us their efforts in trying to get this corrected. It was a large piece of legislation. A couple items that were discussed and it looks like have been talked about and changed were some wording. As you can see here, we have the changing of sign ordinance, and then we have behind it the DRB's role in the change tonight as well, which is, I believe, A1618. And in those changes, I want to restate on page, well, let's go 114912, liability insurance. I did look into this, and there was a change that I was unaware of, and I apologize for that, not being able to speak to that. And yes, there has been a change to $100,000 in bond insurance, holding the city, or making sure the city is not held accountable for anything there. Also, there's been a change in 114915, where we wanted to make sure that if required, I believe, in chapter 1350 of the DRB was pointed out. Also on 114915, next page over, that would be, looks like 5 sidewalk sandwich board signs. This I got a question on. We discussed before we moved it on to possibly bring in more than just one sandwich board sign shall be allowed for each building. If a building had maybe a corner lot and had 2 entrances or more, would we be considering a sign for each entrance? That looks like it's been left as 1 sandwich board per building. So that may be something we want to look at. And going back, I believe, no, I think that's going to, on page, the first page of this ordinance, where you go to 1149.03, on-premises advertising signs, R2 has been removed. So I think the only thing that possibly, unless I'm missing something here, that we still may want to discuss or have questions on is the 1 sign per entrance. So, and that is all I have on that particular part of the ordinance, and then I have some questions on A1615, which we'll get to on the reading of the other ordinance in
Okay.
reading two. Thank you, Irene.
I have, thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Mr. Bukovac and Mr. Winarski want to talk, but before they do that, I wanted to know if, Mr. Law Director, did you want to address that?
No, I was just going to ask Mr. Miller, are you saying that someone's inquired whether or not we would consider having a sandwich board for each entrance?
If there's multiple entrances, like say there's
Right.
2.
And this is different from our conversation last week, not to interrupt you,
No, go ahead.
about the directional signs being 1 for each entrance. That's something different, but is this an additional comment that has been brought to your attention?
Well,
Which is fine.
yes, that's my question. Is that something that also other council members have been asked about or have a concern about? That was the only one that I want to get clarification on. I'm fine with 1 per building, personally. I think any more you start getting cluttered up. There's a lot of businesses back to back to back in our DRB. In our downtown area that the DRB is in control of. But is it something that we have to look at, or is everybody happy with that? I just want to bring attention so we don't get to the second or third reading and go, hey, by the way,
Right.
that was a concern. So
Yeah,
that was the
I
only reason.
just want to make sure it wasn't being interchanged with the directional signs, which I believe we have 1 per.
Correct.
But that's something different, so.
That's something different.
It's a
yes.
legitimate question, it's
Yes.
a logical question.
Okay, thank you. Nope, that's it, thank you.
Mr. Bukovac.
Thank you. I have 2 comments. I'm not sure if Mr. Miller and I think Mr. Pecora were talking about the same thing. My request last week was for under 1149, hold on, I don't have my readers. 1149.15, item 2, for directory signs. I'd like to see that to be 2 directory signs per entrance to a building. That's what we requested, right? It is changed? Mine says 1.
Which 1149.15 subsection
2.
You're correct, it does say, I need my readers. It does say 1 directory per entrance, thank you.
Right.
My other secondary to that was, not with the ordinance itself, I have requested that this ordinance be sent over to design review board members for their input as well, letting them know that they're only gonna have a couple readings to get back to us to incorporate anything they feel that may need changing. Yes, correct, for 2 weeks, so, that is the extent of my comments, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bukovac. Mr. Winarski?
Thank you, Madam President. Let's go to 1149.05, Section A. That doesn't address the sandwich board. It allows for one on-premise advertising sign. Then it goes on to describe, in the situation of a corner lot, 2 or more signs are permitted on each street.
Are you talking about D5?
I'm sorry, A. 1149.05,
Yeah,
Section A.
yeah.
Doesn't that satisfy the question with regards to sandwich boards? You're allowed one on each street.
Oh, yeah, as though they were separate owners, yeah, you're correct.
So I think that
These are
base is covered,
permanent.
isn't it?
Aren't these permanent, Joe? 1105, or 114905, is that permanent signs or is that
Didn't see.
That's a permanent sign,
That's a permanent sign.
I didn't see permanent mentioned in here.
Well, hold on,
That's an advertising on-premise.
on-premise advertising sign, so that is different, that's different from a sandwich board,
Oh,
so.
okay, I'll take your word for it. Oh, and it's not that I doubt you, what you're saying, I just advertising, I'm advertising my soup sandwiches.
Right, so I guess,
Debbie's has one for the corner here, he could put one on Park and one on North Main.
Right.
so I think what Mr. Miller is saying is, can you put the sandwich board on each side of the corner, so to
Yeah.
speak?
Yeah.
So,
If he has 2 entrances, but right now he's only got 1, from my understanding, right? The other one is Corks and the other one is Stubby's.
right, I don't know if they're specific to any businesses, but it makes sense if someone owns a corner building, a building on the corner of an intersection, and they have two different entrances, they may want to have the ability to do that. It's up to council to say yea or nay to that.
Okay. I defer to Mr. Kukuka at this point. Please.
Well, the only question is, that I have, is that in this instance with that building on the corner here, is that you have one owner, but 2 business owners. You have Paul Byers, who owns Giuseppe's, and Dave, who has Corks and Stubby's. So you actually have 3 entrances for 2 different businesses. 3 businesses.
Yeah.
So you have to think about that. So can Paul have a sandwich, and then Dave has 2 for Corks and
Right.
Stubby's? I mean, all of a sudden you got all these sandwich boards on the sidewalk. And a common sign.
Mr. Bukovac?
Thank
and then
Well,
Mr.
my
Miller.
question, I guess, would be that if
okay.
someone calls and complained, how would you advise the building inspector to handle that? Are they in compliance or out of compliance if we had 3 signs there?
Well, I guess the 3 sign question is something, that's kind of an anomaly because, well,
It
Giuseppe's
is.
owned by a separate person though, so you have the 2 other businesses,
But you have one building owner.
one building
You
owner.
know, I guess that's what you have to do is are you regulating it per business owner who owns the building, or are you regulating it to the shop owner who owns the restaurants
Right,
and
yeah,
the
yeah, you're
retail
right,
stuff?
you're right, so you're right.
So
That's-
you have,
That's a very good question. So right now it says building, so perhaps there needs to be some debate as to whether or not it should be limited to building or versus
Shop
actual
owner.
shop owner.
I think it should be physical, tangible building. Personally.
Well, but yeah, but so think about it this way, someone can own a building and then rent it out to various establishments. So the landlord may not want to build a sandwich board up if they have no interest in that, but the actual occupiers may.
Right.
So that's something that council should probably discuss.
and then you have the McCartneys who own Old Town Pizza and Dairy Bar, 2 separate buildings, but one owner of both buildings.
Well, you can say building and then each establishment.
They are separate buildings though, yeah.
Right, right. That's something that council needs to, I mean, we're not going,
Okay.
you need to discuss that, and it's a very good point, Mr. Miller and Mr. Kukuka.
All right, Mr. Bukovac and then Mr. Miller, if you want to comment further.
I just feel like it's a good dilemma to have, but I also believe that it should be per business owner personally, just because that's the people that are supplying the work and who are running a business want to advertise their business. The building owner is not going to advertise for that business, so that's just my personal take on it. If we can accommodate that, that would be great. That was my only comment. Thank you.
Good point. Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if we, I guess once you lease, you take control of that building anyway when you're leasing for, so you
Not
would still
necessarily.
technically,
Well, not necessarily. You could own a, you could lease to an establishment and the landowner still has control over the premises.
Right.
So, I mean, you have an owner.
Instead of being written in the contract.
Right.
Yeah, I would assume that we could probably allow it. Yeah, I see where we're going with that. I still think just by limiting it to the number of physically structural entrances, egress, ingress on it, and say, here, if you have 2 entrances, one on each side, you can put a sign, because you want to be able to maybe put something up when they come in one door, if they're coming in another door, to be able to still attract their attention to a sale or something's going on. I would like to keep it simple if there's an entrance in.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you're going to be enforcing this. What kind of comments do you have?
I like to keep it simple aspect to this. I mean, this is kind of one of them solutions looking for a problem. You, right now, with 1 per building, if you have somebody, they've got an avenue, there's a zoning board of appeals. I mean, I doubt you're gonna have too many instances where you've got 2 sandwich boards per building, but if you have that unique situation, you go in for the zoning board of appeals, and if they find it's a unique enough situation, then they'll grant it, the variance. So I think keep it simple, allow 1 per building, and let's see what happens.
Do you need a grant for a temporary sign, a sandwich board?
If you only have 1 per building, you only have 1 per building. And if somebody wants 2 per building, they would go in front of the zoning board of appeals.
I hate to have to go to the ZBA because I want to promote my lunch special today.
Well, you're not only going to do that once, you're going to want to do it permanently. So I think you let a board like that decide what buildings are unique and which buildings deserve or need 2 sandwich boards.
If I can continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I guess the question is, what's the definition of a building then?
A building, a piece of land that's deeded to the county that's owned by 1
So
person.
on the corner here, we probably have an attorney, a photographer, another photographer, and
Are those all separate
all in the
buildings?
same building. That's the one hat is a hat. What was it? You're only gonna allow 1 sandwich board? I think.
Well, then if you have a unique
you do-
situation,
Instead of doing number of businesses, because an example being over in the building that I'm in, we have multiple businesses, you don't want 10 sandwich boards because we're all upstairs, right? But I think the 1 per entrance would make sense, per building.
then you don't have too many of those unique situations. I think you're making an ordinance that's too complicated. If somebody has that unique situation, they come in front of the zoning board of appeals and solve it.
Okay, we've got a legal question here. Mr. Pecora, I'd like you to comment on it. You had your hand up. And then we'll have Mr. Kukuka.
Well, what's the legal question?
Well, I thought you had your
Well,
hand
no,
up.
I was just going to, the question I had, it's not a legal question, but it's a factual question. I guess we need to know is how many circumstances do we have where there's more than 1 establishment in a building other than Corks and Stubbs and Giuseppe's, and then that around the corner, I'm not sure, near Fox and Fraley, but on the back of Fox and Fraley, there's another, I think, a mattress store. Or maybe different building. And that's the thing, I mean, we have different establishments, number of buildings. I guess we need to figure out whether or not this is really gonna be a problem.
It's not a problem.
But I do like the idea of entrances, Mr. Kuku's idea of different entrances.
I agree.
Because it takes 1 step away, 1 more step out of the process for people. And then the BZA shouldn't have to, I don't think should have to worry about that. But so maybe we keep it building, but add entrances and keep it that simple.
Mr. Schaefer's photography entrance in the front, entrance in the back on 2 different streets. That would be an example. It's 1 building, but we'd like to see him be able to put, say, a sandwich board or something out there in front, 1 out back. Just, hey, come on in. We're
Help the
happy to
consumer if they're
Right.
on 1 street versus
walk in photography or whatever. If you have that,
Sure,
why would they have to come spend $35 and wait a month
right,
to get this done when they're going to have maybe some occasion that is.
right. Not standing in the way of
Yeah,
business.
I like the idea of building entrance and be done with it. And I don't think that's.
So I could
gonna-
just add, shall be allowed for each building entrance. And that's the only addition I really need then.
Mr. Pecora, procedurally, what would you like to do?
Well, this is just a first reading, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
you want to make the, you
So
want,
someone should have moved to amend, and then I could amend.
Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move to amend That would be 15.5 sidewalk sandwich board signs to read. One sandwich board sign shall be allowed for each building entrance, subject to the following conditions.
Can I have a definition of where it's at, please?
That would be in 1149.15. That would be the second page, halfway down or so, under number 5, sidewalk sandwich board signs, between perpendicular projecting signs and prohibited signs.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Winarski.
I'll second it.
All right, Mr. Kukuka.
I hate to be Mr. Procedural, but don't you have a motion and a second to
Yes.
take the second
Yes.
reading, so you need to,
So we have to revoke
Withdraw
that,
those.
yeah, that's, we have to-
yeah, but don't you have to withdraw that before?
Good point, thanks, I appreciate that. Can we have a,
Sorry,
the
Mr. Procedural.
motion and the second were made by Mr. Goodell and Mr. Miller. Do you want to withdraw your motion?
Please,
Okay.
I'd like to
Alright.
withdraw my second and
All
amend
right,
it.
Mr. Miller, you want to make that motion?
Yes, after withdrawing the
Okay,
second, thank you, Mr. Kukuka, you're right in that
Mr.
regard.
Winarski?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Miller to amend with a second by Mr. Winarski. Is there any comment on the amendment, any further comment? Seeing none. Roll call, vote, please.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak? Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
yes.
Mrs. Vasil?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes,
Okay, that motion passes 7-0. The amendment stands. Do I have a motion to take this on to the second reading? Mr. Goodell?
I'd like the motion to take this on to the second reading.
Okay, Mr. Miller, do you want to send it to the second reading?
please, thank you.
Second by Mr. Miller to send it on to the second reading. Any comments? Any further comments, questions? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasil?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes,
Motion passes. This goes on to these, item 6A goes on to the second reading. We are now on item 7A, ordinances and resolutions, second reading, item 7A.
A resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to implement a sidewalk repair program at a cost to the city not to exceed $40,000 for the year 2016.
Mr. Goodell.
I'd like to make a motion to take item 7A to the third reading.
Mr. Winarski.
I'll second that.
It's a motion by Mr. Goodell and a second by Mr. Winarski to send this on to the third reading. Mr. Bukavak.
Thank you. I just need clarification on future steps. If I remember correctly, this is the beginning part. We're going to have to produce additional ordinance on how to proceed, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Have my comments.
Is that it? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasil?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
yes,
Motion passes 7-0. 7A goes on to the third reading. Item 7B.
An ordinance amending Amherst Codified Ordinance Section 1149.06, 1149.07, 1149.08, and 1149.12 of Chapter 1149 signs. And I just want to point out that Section 1149.06, Section 1I was added.
Mr. Goodell.
Make a motion to take item 7B to the third reading.
Mr. Winarski.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second to take item 7B to the third reading. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasil?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
yes.
Item passes 7-0. Item 7B is sent to the third reading. Item 8, ordinances and resolutions, third reading. There are none. Item 9, miscellaneous and acknowledgement of the public. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on any subject? Mr. Winarski.
Thank you. Coming up next, we're going to have item number 10, which is the agenda request and committee schedule.
with the next meeting being May 2nd, or next committee meeting typically May 2nd, I'd like to ask any committee members who have something to bring to us that day, if we could consider maybe starting at 7:30. And the reason for that is the schools have their State of the Union, or their State of the Schools meeting at 6:30 at the junior high, guaranteed to be 40 minutes or less. And I believe they're going to have their announcement with regards to the new school that they have planned, or they're hoping for. So if anyone has a committee meeting, if we could go for 7:30, I'd appreciate it, because I would like to go to that.
Okay, I'm hoping that we will have the meetings postponed, there's one meeting, and hopefully it'll be the 9th of May, hopefully.
Okay,
So,
I'm going back as well, I get screwed up.
that's all. Thank you very much.
okay,
Appreciate
great. All right, any other comments or on any item? Okay. Number 10, agenda requests and committee meeting schedules.
I have one, it's A-16-19. It's to increase appropriations for DRETAC expenses in Fund 100, 240, and 300, and that's with emergency, and that's complete.
Thank you. All right, for finance, I have one item. The item is read by the clerk of council, and I will call that, as long as there are no other meetings, I'll call that for the 9th, 2 weeks from today, the 9th of May at 7 p.m. Building and Lands, Mr. Janik.
No items, Madam President, please cancel.
Streets, Mr. Bukovac.
No items, please cancel.
Community Development, Mr. Goodell.
Nothing at this time, Madam President, please cancel.
Okay, Executive, Mr. Van Truen.
No items, please cancel.
Ordinance, Mr. Miller.
No items, please cancel.
Thank you. Utilities, Mr. Janik.
No items, please cancel.
Thank you. Recycle, Mr. Miller.
Keep putting it in the green bucket.
Thank
No
you.
items, please cancel.
Thank you. Technology, Mr. Bukovac.
No items, please cancel.
Police and Fire, Mr. Winarski.
Nothing at this time, Madam President.
Thank you. Annexation, Mr. Miller.
No items, please cancel.
All right, we will call the next meeting for the 9th then at 6:45.
Thank you.
Okay, and that way it'll be totally clear for those who wish to attend the state of schools. All right. The next item I have is number 11, reports of the administration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Kukuka?
Yeah, the item that was submitted by my office for the DRETAC fees, if you look that up, that is for, to pay for prosecutors for property taxes. So last year, we must have had a buku amount of legal fees for property taxes because for some reason it came in a little bit higher, so we need to appropriate a bit more. So I'll be here for that meeting on the 9th and
Okay,
answer
thank
any
you.
questions at that time. I just want to give council that update. End of report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey?
Tax day has come and gone. We're still processing the returns. We'll get you some numbers as soon as we have them. End of report.
Thank you. Mr. Pecora?
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Jeffries?
No report, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. The last day for our summer help applications was Friday, so we've got a nice stack of summer help applications. We'll be going through those and probably notifying the young people of the jobs, so they won't all get jobs because there was a pretty big pile of them. Our engineers are getting real close with our street program, so we should be advertising for bids very soon, probably within the next couple weeks. And then it'll be a couple weeks after that before we can accept bids. And I suppose that's it. So end of report.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Mayor. Mr. Miller.
Move to accept reports of administration.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to accept the reports of the administration. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The reports of the administration are accepted. Vote 7-0. Mr. Miller.
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Goodell. There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. We are adjourned at 7:29 p.m. Thank you.
All right.
All right.